Single mom's life-changing night at charity gala. Mafia boss's son, 10, calls her mommy in touching moment. The Silver Oaks Hotel shimmered under a canopy of stars, its elegant rooftop shining brightly against the darkened sky. Inside, laughter and clinking glasses celebrated fortunes amassed and dreams fulfilled. But for Lisa, it was the stuff of fairy tales, distant and unattainable. Dressed in a second-hand emerald gown, she felt like a pretender among the riches. The air crackled with a mix of anxiety and longing as she stepped into the ballroom, stars in her eyes and Max's face, a memory, echoing in her heart. As a single mom working double shifts at the greasy diner in Aurora Heights, this night felt impossibly grand. Each paycheck was a struggle to keep the bills at bay, and the weight of worry hung like a lead blanket over her decisions. But tonight, she had dared to dream. She sought a moment away from the endless cycle of takes and sacrifices. Navigating through the crowd, Lisa felt like a ghost, invisible, yet deeply aware of every clinking glass and every raised eyebrow. They looked her way, others, sparkling gazes, revealing a kind of disdain she couldn't quite shake. She wore her heart on her sleeve, the hum of her son's laughter echoing in her ears. Suddenly, she could almost feel Max beside her, weaving stories and expressing wild dreams that felt just out of her reach. Then came Marco. With jet-black hair and a hazel gaze that sparkled like the chandeliers above, he broke through the noise and chaos. A wistful look filled his eyes when he saw her, and in that moment, she felt the weight of 1,000 dreams collide. "Mommy?" he called playfully, his innocence radiating warmth amidst the chill of judgment from the elite surrounding them. A wave of hushed murmurs rippled through the room, the contrast of their worlds painfully stark. But there was something genuine about Marco, and in his voice, Lisa recognized the longing for acceptance that mirrored her own struggle. Time seemed to still, and she longed to gather him into a hug, as if they shared a bond stronger than blood. Before she could respond, tension engulfed the space. The laughter faded, replaced by whispered fears, as Marco's father, a towering figure wrapped in shadows, strode into the ballroom. Surrounded by men who radiated menace, he cast a dark pallor over the glimmering celebration. Lisa's instincts flared. The divide between their lives grew more apparent. As chaos brewed and tensions ignited, Lisa felt a swell of indignation. She remembered her struggles, the grit it took to keep Max's dreams alive. She wouldn't be a bystander tonight. Before she could think twice, she stepped forward. "Stop!" she cried, her voice slicing through the air. The crowd fell silent, an electric hush wrapped around her words. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue." And just like that, they were no longer worlds apart. The young boy looked at her with calm admiration, an extension of their shared moment of courage amidst uncertainty. The room buzzed with tense anticipation. Lisa felt alive and powerful. Could it be that a bond so unlikely might break through the thick facade of societal expectations? As the echoes of uncertainty loomed and whispers of threats lingered, the night held its breath. Would Lisa's newfound resolve protect Marco and herself? The future felt as uncertain as the stars outside, glimmering yet distant. Perhaps love and bravery were the greatest treasures of all, but could that magic survive the storm brewing on the horizon? Lisa's heart raced, and the silence weighed heavy on her shoulders. It was as if the entire ballroom held its breath, waiting for the storm to break. Marco's innocent gaze anchored her. He seemed to pull strength from her resolve, despite the gravity of his father's presence looming near. "Get away from him!" The words came out sharper than she intended, but they felt necessary. The crowd parted slightly, drawn to the tension that crackled in the air. Faces turned towards her, some in disbelief and others in intrigue, while the whispers sharpened like knives. Marco stood still, his small frame dwarfed by the menacing shadow of his father, who now fixed his fierce gaze upon Lisa. She was acutely aware of the heat rising from the collar of her gown. Had she really just challenged a man who commanded fear with a look? But she felt a deeper stirring within, a mother's resolve, fierce and unyielding. "Who do you think you are?" Marco's father stepped forward, his voice a low growl. The room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in as he towered over her. "I'm just someone who cares about this boy." She surprised herself with her own courage. He deserves better than this fear. The undercurrent of her voice trembled, revealing the vulnerability she had always hidden beneath her tough exterior. Behind her, she sensed the crowd shifting. Some faces softened, the kindness she had sought igniting a flicker of understanding. None of this was lost on Marco. His expression, a mix of admiration and awe, ignited a small fire of hope within her. The elder Corrado, a name that echoed through whispers of the diner, seemed unfazed for a moment, a flicker of confusion crossing his sharp features. It was gone as fast as it had appeared. He could not afford to appear weak in front of his men, but Lisa could feel the tension shift. "Caring about him won't change anything, lady," he warned, a sneer playing at the corner of his mouth. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." "Maybe not, but I know what it feels like to be trapped." Her voice softened, the connection to her own struggles clear. "To be scared for your child's future, and to want something better for them." For a heartbeat, Lisa dared to look at Marco, his little face reflecting an innocence she wished to safeguard. Her own heartache felt like a mirror reflecting back through him. It was a moment that felt infinite, filled with meaning. The room's mood shifted again. Lisa could see some guests shifting uncomfortably, the realization that money couldn't shield them from the heartache of real life dawning upon them. "Enough," Corrado snapped, and the moment shattered. "Take your place, boy." He reached for Marco, who flinched, instinctively stepping back toward Lisa. "No!" The word fell from her lips with such force that even she was taken aback. In that defiant moment, the stakes felt higher than they ever had before. Lisa stood tall, interposing herself between the boy and his father. The icy sheen of fear wrapped tightly around her heart, but it was overshadowed by the fiery pulse of determination. As the standoff marked a quiet stillness, Lisa realized there was no turning back. The line had been drawn, her heart racing, not just out of fear, but for the sake of a fleeting chance of change. And as the moment hung in the balance, echoing loud enough for the stars to hear, she couldn't help but wonder what cost they would pay together for this newfound bravery. Would they emerge stronger, or would the world outside crush them both? The answer loomed heavy, waiting to unravel in the night's confusing haze. Lisa felt her heart hammering against her ribcage like a wild drum. The tension in the air was electric, each breath heavy with the weight of her defiance. Marco's small hand clutched her arm, his fingers trembling slightly. In that moment, her protective instincts went into overdrive, and all the familiar worries about her own safety faded into the background. "Let him go," she demanded, her voice rising above the murmurs of disbelief echoing around the ballroom. It was unnerving how the crowd seemed to hold back their opinions, watching her like a scene unfolding in a movie. She thought of every scrappy moment she'd fought for her own boy back home. This moment wasn't any different. "Lady, you're making a mistake you won't forget," Corrado threatened, sneering as he narrowed his gaze. There was a coldness in his eyes that sent a ripple of unease through her, but she stood her ground, driven by the flickering hope in Marco's eyes. "Maybe," she replied, "but it's not a mistake to stand up for a child who deserves love instead of fear." A hush swept the crowd as they processed her words, a momentary pause in the ongoing drama of status and power. Just then, a sudden movement caught her eye. A woman in the back, her face a mask of resolute calm, took a step forward. It was Eleanor, the event organizer, known for her fierce dedication to children's rights. Eleanor's sharp gaze pinned down the elder Corrado like a spotlight. "Let's remember, this is a charity event for the children," Eleanor called out, "not a stage for your personal conflicts." Her voice, strong and clear, reverberated through the room, coaxing other attendees to shift from being passive spectators to feeling the gravity of the moment. Lisa couldn't help but glance at Marco. There was something magical in his wide open eyes, reflecting a longing for safety, love, and acceptance. In that instant, Lisa made a silent vow to be that protective shield for him, whatever it took. Go back to him, Corrado, Eleanor continued, now addressing the elder. You may think money and power protect you, but love is much stronger than your fear tactics. It's time to rethink your legacy. The damning words hung in the air, and Lisa felt the tension shift. A murmuring wave swept through the crowd. Some guests shook their heads, while others nodded, emboldened by Eleanor's supportive presence. It was a moment of unity, a collective decision to stand up for the vulnerable. Do you see this, Marco? Lisa whispered, leaning down to meet his gaze. You're not alone anymore. Her heart swelled, hearing his soft but sincere reply. I believe in you, Lisa, Marco said, a hint of courage breaking through his small frame. Just as hope surged within her, Corrado's expression hardened, his fury igniting again. Believe it or not, love won't save you from the consequences of standing against me, he spat, taking a step forward, aggression radiating from him like heat from a raging fire. Lisa's breath hitched. She could feel the audience's eyes narrowing, the instance of fear battling with the adrenaline of bravery. Before she could react, a loud crash echoed across the ballroom. A glass chandelier fell, scattering sparkling shards across the dance floor. Gasps erupted, and people jumped back, chaos erupting in a flurry of movement. Get down, Eleanor shouted, trying to get everyone calm, the fear in her eyes mirrored in the crowd. In the fray, Lisa grabbed Marco's arm and pulled him close, instincts kicking in as she shielded him from potential danger. Her heart raced, not just from fear, but from the heightened sense of urgency now surrounding them. As the frenzy continued and sirens began to wail in the distance, Lisa realized how truly fragile the safety she had fought for was. What was meant to be a night of charity had spiraled into chaos that threatened to engulf them all. Would this the turning point together, or would the shadows lurking around them close in once more? The air buzzed with uncertainty as Lisa prepared for whatever was to come, her courage sparking a bold question in her mind. Was this the turning point that would change everything, or a prelude to an even greater danger? The air felt alive with fear and chaos as the crowd surged in different directions, their faces a mix of panic and confusion. Lisa tightened her grip on Marco, her instincts kicking in. She could barely process the sharp glint of glass strewn across the dance floor, or the frantic movements of the guests trying to escape the unfolding turmoil. Stay close to me, she yelled, her voice cutting through the noise. Marco nodded, his eyes wide with terror, and pressed against her side. She felt her heart race, not just for herself, but for the little boy whose safety felt intricately intertwined with her own moment of bravery. Eleanor moved through the crowd, her authoritative voice ringing out. Everyone, calm down. We need to clear the room. She guided a group toward the nearest exit, her determined demeanor encouraging others to follow. Lisa could see Eleanor's strength shining through the haze of fear. As guests rushed past, Lisa felt the heat of Corrado's anger still lingering in the air. The chaos might have given them a temporary respite, but she could feel it simmering just beneath the surface. He wouldn't back down easily. Come this way, Eleanor called, waving her arms to usher the stragglers. Lisa hesitated for a moment, glancing back at Corrado. He was still standing there, looming ominously amidst the scattered shards of crystal, a mountain of fury in a suit that shouted authority. She knew he wouldn't let go of Marco without a fight. In that instant, the thought hit her like a bolt of lightning. If she could create a distraction, perhaps they could slip away unnoticed. Lisa took a deep breath and shouted, "Hey, over here!" She pointed toward the opposite side of the ballroom, where two servers were still standing, frozen in confusion. Marco looked up at her, eyes filled with uncertainty. "What are you doing?" he squeaked, as if understanding the danger for the first time. "Trust me," she whispered, her voice fierce yet reassuring. and she steered them away from the main exodus, dragging Marco toward the bar area where fewer people were looking. Suddenly, she heard Corrado's voice cut through the noise, low and threatening. "Don't you dare run. You can't hide from me." Panic surged through her as she accelerated their movement, pushing toward a door that led backstage. She could almost hear the pounding of her own heart, vibrating in sync with the chaos around them. Once they were shielded behind the curtain, Lisa leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. "We need to find a way out," she said, glancing over Marco's small frame, trying to gauge his level of fear. "Is he going to hurt us?" Marco's voice trembled. "No," Lisa replied firmly, forcing her voice to stay steady. "We'll be okay. I won't let anyone hurt you." But the doubt crept in at the edges of her mind. What if she had underestimated Corrado? What if this was just the beginning of something much darker? She needed to think fast, to move past the fear that threatened to envelop her. As she gathered her thoughts, she heard hurried footsteps and frantic whispers from the other side of the curtain. It sounded like Eleanor was rallying more guests, trying to maintain order amidst the growing panic. Lisa felt a rush of urgency. "Let's go," she said, pulling Marco with her as she pushed through the curtain, not yet sure where they were headed, but knowing they couldn't stay there. As they emerged into a dim hallway, she could see an emergency exit sign glowing faintly in the distance, a beacon of hope. But just as they headed toward it, a figure loomed at the end of the corridor, blocking their escape. It was Corrado. His cold expression turned her blood to ice. "You can't run from me forever." Lisa swallowed hard, determination igniting within her. "I might not be able to escape, but I sure won't give up." With that, she took a step forward, holding Marco tightly to her side. Knowing that all the courage in her heart would be needed now more than ever, Lisa prepared for the inevitable confrontation looming ahead. Would her defiance turn the tide, or would the shadows creeping closer overwhelm her resolve once again? The answer lay just out of reach, waiting to be uncovered. The tension in the air thickened, and Lisa fought to keep her breathing steady. Corrado stood there, a wall of anger and intent, his eyes dark pools that promised trouble. She could feel the weight of his gaze on her, a tangible force that pushed against her resolve. "Let the boy go," she said, trying to sound authoritative despite her racing heart. Every instinct urged her to hide, to run, but she couldn't show fear, not now, not when Marco was looking to her for strength. "I'll do nothing of the sort." Corrado stepped forward, the sharp click of his shoes echoing in the narrow hallway. Each step toward her felt like a countdown, a reminder that the window of escape was closing. Desperation surged within her. In the blink of an eye, she scanned the surroundings. The dim light flickered overhead. She noticed a stack of crates pushed against one wall, possibly supplies for the gala. If she could create another diversion, maybe they could slip past him. That thought sparked a moment of clarity amongst the fear. "Listen," she began, her voice dripping with resolve. "If you want the boy, you'll have to get through me first." Corrado's lips twisted into a sneer. "So be it," he replied, his low tone smooth like ice. "But know this. I have no qualms about making this hurt." Lisa's mind raced. With every breath, she felt the urgency deepening. She had no weapons, no allies, just her instincts and a fierce love for Marco that outweighed her fear. "Marco," she whispered, "if I say go, you run, understand?" He nodded, his small face grave with comprehension. That tiny flicker of trust gave her more strength than she knew she had. "Now!" she shouted, pushing Marco behind her as she grabbed a nearby crate, throwing it toward Corrado. It toppled over, sending its contents rolling across the floor. For a brief moment, surprise washed over his face as he stumbled backward. "Go!" she screamed at Marco, and as he darted around the fallen crates, Lisa followed, her heart pounding in sync with their hurried escape. They zipped down the dim hallway, skirting the edges of the chaos still erupting in the ballroom. Lisa could hear Eleanor calling out orders and urging people towards safety, her voice a steady anchor amid the uproar. But Corrado was quick to regain his footing, his shout echoing behind them. "They won't get away! Find them!" The sound of hurried footsteps thrummed in the distance as Lisa pulled Marco toward an unmarked door at the far end of the hallway. They reached it just as a group of guests rounded the corner, their eyes wide with horror and confusion. "Open it! Open it!" she urged, panic rising higher now. But the handle didn't budge. It was locked tight. Her heart sank for a moment. What if it was a dead end? "Help, please," she cried out to the group, desperation leaking into her voice. Just then, the door swung open to reveal a frazzled staff member, eyes wide with terror as he took in the scene. "What's happening?" he gasped. "Let us out," Lisa shouted, urgency boiling in her veins. "They're coming." Without waiting for a response, she shoved Marco forward, nearly pushing him out of harm's way. The staff members stepped aside, and they tumbled through the door just as Corrado's voice reached a fever pitch. "Stop them!" The cool night air hit them like a wave, a stark contrast to the chaos they had just fled. They sprinted into the parking lot, Lisa's heart hammering louder than ever. "Where do we go now?" Marco panted, looking up at her with wide, frightened eyes. She didn't have an answer. All she could think was that they had to keep moving, keep running, until it was safe. "Just keep going," she urged, glancing back toward the door, expecting Corrado to burst through any second. But as they hurried into the shadows, a familiar vehicle caught her eye, a black SUV parked in the corner. It was Eleanor's car. "Over there," Lisa directed Marco, and they raced toward it, their footsteps pounding on the asphalt like wild drums of hope and uncertainty. But as she reached for the door handle, she heard a voice, soft yet, "Cut through the night. You won't escape that easily." The hairs on the back of her neck prickled at Corrado's unmistakable tone, growing closer, more insistent. She turned to see him moving swiftly across the lot, rage radiating from him like a storm. With no time to think, Lisa opened the door and pushed Marco inside, shouting, "Get in!" But would they make it out? Would they escape the storm that was Corrado? The tension built as Corrado closed the distance, and just as Lisa hopped into the car, she couldn't shake the chilling thought. This was only the beginning. The engine roared to life as Lisa slammed the door behind her, feeling the weight of panic pressing down. She glanced at Marco in the back seat, whose eyes were wide with confusion and a flicker of fear. "Hold on tight," she yelled, her heart pounding in her chest. She threw the car into gear, tires squealing as they shot forward. The world blurred as they sped past the other parked vehicles, the brightness of the Gala lights fading behind them. Corrado was a silhouette in the rearview mirror, his face twisted with rage. "Lisa, where are we going?" Marco cried from the back, his voice trembling. "Anywhere but here," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. The streets felt alien. The city she knew was swallowed by shadows now. As she navigated through the maze of the parking lot, she couldn't escape the feeling of urgency clawing at her. Corrado wouldn't stop. He'd follow them like a hawk, relentless and determined. "Big buildings! We need to find a big building," Marco suggested, his eyes darting nervously. "Yes," she said, her mind racing. "City Hall, the police station." Each idea sparked another, leading to a possible refuge. But as she turned onto a main road, the blare of horns surged, and she realized they were heading into the heart of the city, the very center thrumming with life, but cloaked in night. A sudden realization struck her. She was vulnerable. The car was an open invitation. They needed to vanish. Elevated streets and shadowy alleys were their allies now. "Get down," she urged, pressing the accelerator more, weaving through traffic. She spotted an alleyway ahead and veered sharply into it, tires screeching again. The sound echoed around them, amplifying her fear tenfold. As they descended deeper into the labyrinth, her heart raced not only for the chase, but for the weight of their situation. What were they becoming in this moment? Who were they running from? And could they really escape? Suddenly, a flash of headlights pierced the darkness behind them. "It's him!" Marco shouted, his voice a mix of horror and assertion. "Stay low," she commanded, ducking her head closer to the steering wheel. Lisa couldn't intentionally aim for a place of safety. The fear distilled her options like fumes through a long tunnel. She glanced back to see Corrado's car slam through the intersection, its engine snarling, still determined. "Keep running," Marco urged, grounding her frantic thoughts with his innocence. At the far end of the alley, she spotted a potential oasis, a construction site. The skeletal remains of a building jutted upwards, half-finished and unguarded. It seemed perfect, the entrance scarcely lit by flickering bulbs that dangled like stars. She made a split-second decision and sped towards it, praying no one was inside. "Get ready," she shouted as she swerved into a narrow parking area. "Go!" Marco exclaimed, his courage electrifying. Lisa leaped from the car as soon as it grinded to a halt, grasping Marco's hand tightly. They bolted towards the entrance, breaths quickening, hearts racing, with a mixture of fear and hope. Inside, the air was stale, dust swirling in the beams of fading light. The low, hollow sounds of their footsteps echoed in the emptiness, but every instinct told her they couldn't rest. She led Marco through the maze of scaffolding, every corner and crevice looking like a perfect hiding spot. "This is where the workers come, right?" Marco whispered, eyes darting around, imagining dangers lurking. "Yeah, and we'll stay caught in the shadows." But would they be concealed well enough against Corrado's relentless pursuit? The notion of being found sent chills through her bones. They crouched behind a large stack of wood, hearts thudding as they listened for any sign of danger. Moments passed like hours, the silence heavy with dread. But the stillness shattered as the unmistakable roar of an engine gunned its way into the deserted area outside. "Lisa," Marco's voice trembled, pulling her attention back to him. "Stay close," she whispered, drawing him tighter against her. Just as she thought they might breathe a sigh of relief, the clang of metal rang through the open space. The unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed, advancing toward them. "Thinking you could hide from me?" Corrado's voice cut through the shadows, low and menacing, sending a chill down her spine. Now they were trapped, the walls closing in, and Corrado's determination like a noose tightening around their hopes. Would this be where it all ended? A moment of truth awaited them next, but what would it reveal? The footsteps grew louder, thudding ominously against the concrete floor. Lisa leaned harder against the cool wood, her heart racing faster than the footsteps approaching them. Marco's small frame shivered as he pressed closer, eyes wide with terror. "Do you think he'll find us?" Marco whispered, his voice barely audible. "I don't know," Lisa replied, forcing herself to keep her tone steady. "But we have to be quiet. Just keep breathing." Corrado's presence hung thick in the air, a heavy weight that threatened to envelop them. She could almost feel his focus narrowing, honing in on the slightest movement. The tension between fear and determination twisted in her stomach. Did they really have nowhere to go? "Do you think he's angry?" Marco asked, glancing up at her, his innocence juxtaposed with the very real threat they faced. "Angry doesn't even—" "But we can't give up," she said, squeezing his hand tighter. "Remember what we talked about. We'll find a way out together." Lisa focused her breathing, trying to drown out the thudding of her heart. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from somewhere deeper in the construction site. Corrado's voice rose above the chaos, a sharp command barking through the shadows. "Search every corner. I want them found." Marco jumped at the sound, and Lisa could feel the panic radiating off him. "What if he finds us?" His voice shook, vulnerability spilling over. "He won't," she whispered, with more confidence than she felt. "We've got this. Just a little longer." A flicker of movement caught Lisa's eye. Shadows danced behind a nearby pillar, and her breath caught in her throat. Corrado's men were here, prowling like wolves on the hunt. If they found them, it would be over. Lisa's mind raced, searching for options. She noticed a gap in the wall, a space just wide enough for a child to slip through. If only she could get Marco to safety. There, she pointed, her voice a mixture of urgency and calm. Do you see that opening? Yeah. Marco's voice quivered, but a spark of hope flickered in his eyes. Can you crawl through it? I'll cover you, she encouraged, voice steady. He nodded quickly, determination shifting his fear into action. Okay, I'll try. Ready? Go, she urged, pushing him gently toward the small opening. As he crawled through, she held her breath, every second feeling like an eternity. Each sound, metal clanging, voices, sent her heart racing again. He made it! Marco barely fit, but he slipped through the gap. Relief washed over her, and she felt a surge of protection for him. But now, all eyes would be on her. Where are you? Corrado shouted. Lisa's pulse quickened. She had to buy him time. With every ounce of strength, she pushed past her fear. She took a breath and stepped out from behind the wood, letting the shadows recede. Here, she called, her voice quivering but fierce. Corrado turned sharply, and their eyes met. Rage washed over his face, and in that moment, she knew she'd become the distraction. You want me? Come and get me. The growl of the engine started to fade. He advanced. You think you can play games with me? You're trapped, he sneered. She didn't care what he thought. All that mattered was keeping Marco safe. Still, Lisa's gut twisted with anxiety. She needed a plan. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed again from outside, louder this time. A vehicle skidding to a stop? Lisa felt her heart flip. Reinforcements? Maybe, but what kind? Lisa! Marco's small voice came through the opening. What's happening? I don't know, but we have to move, she cried, urgency rushing through her. Then, the construction site reverberated with noise. Heavy footsteps could be heard. Not just Corrado's, but more. Laughter, more voices. Was someone else out there? Get behind me, Marco! She shouted as she turned to face the others coming in. But as she prepared herself for a confrontation, fear coiled in her chest again. They didn't have much time. Was this the end of their escape, or could it lead to a way out? Lisa braced herself for whatever was coming next. How would she protect Marco? And what if there were more dangers waiting just beyond the door? Time was running out, and their chance for freedom hung by a thread. A loud voice rang out, echoing through the construction site, silencing the chatter. Get inside! Find them now! Lisa's heart pounded as she prepared for the worst. The sound of heavy boots thundered closer. Sweat dripped down her temples, and she could barely hear Marco's soft breaths behind her. She glanced back, reassuring him with a quick smile, though her stomach churned with fear. Please be safe, she whispered under her breath, hoping he could hear her even in the chaos. Corrado's voice, seasoned with authority, grew clearer. They can't hide forever. I want them brought to me. There was a certainty in his tone that sent a chill down her spine. Lisa quickly surveyed her surroundings. The opening where Marco had slipped through was still accessible, but she doubted she could reach it unnoticed. Her eyes landed on a stack of old crates to the right, haphazardly piled together. If she could create a distraction, there might be a chance to escape. Think, Lisa, think, she urged herself, desperately brainstorming a plan. Without thinking too much about the consequences, she rushed towards the crates, her heart racing. With every ounce of her strength, she began to topple the crates one by one, the splintering wood splintering into pieces. The crash drew immediate attention. She could hear Corrado's men shout, briskly navigating towards the noise. Over there, one of them shouted. Her plan was working. Go, Marco, stay low and stay quiet, she hissed, watching as he scrambled back into the shadows, heart pounding in his tiny chest. In the frenzy of movement, Lisa's mind felt clearer. Adrenaline surged through her as she grabbed a nearby pipe, then pulled it off a battered wall. It would serve as a weapon, her only means to defend her son if it came to that. A laugh echoed from the darkness. You think you can fight back? Corrado taunted. You're outnumbered. Lisa could hear the heavy footsteps of Corrado's men approaching, but she refused to be paralyzed by fear. They thought they had the upper hand, and it infuriated her. Get ready, Lisa. She clenched the pipe, feeling its cool surface against her palm. Suddenly, the shadows shifted, and a few of Corrado's men stepped into the dimly lit area. Their eyes darted around as they began to assess the situation. Lisa wasted no time. She launched the pipe toward a nearby wall, causing a loud clang that echoed through the site. "Over there!" another shouted. The men rushed toward the noise, giving her precious seconds. "Now, Marco!" Lisa called out, just above a whisper, and with that, she sprinted toward the wall where her son had gone. She squeezed through the gap just as two figures turned back, realizing their mistake, but it was too late. Marco pulled her in, and she quickly found her breath, now back together in the small space. "Did you see that? You were amazing," Marco whispered, awe lacing his voice. Lisa knelt down, looking him in the eyes. "We're not safe yet, okay? But we can't stop. We have to be smart and brave." "I'm ready," Marco said with surprising confidence. Lisa nodded, her heart swelling with pride, but she knew they were far from out of danger. Outside, the sound of footsteps grew louder, accompanied by the harsh crack of tension in the air. "Quickly, there's another way out over there." She pointed to the far wall, where another narrow passage was partially hidden by debris. They crawled through, eagerness blending with fear. Every rustle made her heart skip. As they moved farther from that chaotic shell of a building, broken pieces of their old lives scattered around them like fallen leaves. Suddenly, another crash echoed, worse than before. The men were closing in, and she'd risked everything by making noise. What would happen when they were discovered? "Get ready," she whispered, fatigue and fear creeping into her voice. Would they make it out alive, or would Corrado finally catch them? With every shallow breath, Lisa felt the pull of time. Freedom was so close, but so was danger. Would they ever truly escape? The narrow passage was stifling, darkness swallowing them whole as they crawled deeper into the rubble. Lisa's palms scraped against the rough surface, her fingers trembling with anxiety. Marco's soft breaths were the only indication that her son was still behind her, still safe, for now. "Keep moving," she urged, trying to infuse her voice with calmness, but she felt anything but calm. Each scrape of debris reminded her of what was at stake. Just as they reached a bend, faint voices echoed in the distance. Corrado's men were searching, relentless, their calls bouncing off the walls. "Did you check the west side? They have to be around." Lisa winced. The men were everywhere, their voices ringing like death knells over her heart. She pressed against the wall, pulling Marco close. "We have to stay silent, okay?" she whispered, needing him to understand the gravity of their situation. The child nodded, his wide eyes reflecting the fear in her heart. She felt pain in her chest from trying to shield him, wishing to carry him out of the nightmare instead of forcing him to live through it. They crawled on, the air growing stale. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a small glimmer of light. Lisa's heart leaped, but she quickly steadied herself. Light could mean safety or more danger. She peered through the crevice, her heart racing. What she saw made her stomach turn. Beyond the opening, the construction site loomed like a monster. Shadows danced, flitting in and out of vision. Men with guns gathered around their makeshift barricades. This wasn't just a game of hide and seek anymore. It was a battle for their lives. "Mommy, what do we do?" Marco's voice quivered, breaking the silence. Her heart broke at the innocent question. "We wait. We stay quiet. We be brave." Lisa scanned for another escape route. Time was slipping away. They had to act before the men discovered their hiding place. Just when she thought all hope was lost, she noticed a wooden beam partially hidden behind a pile of bricks near the entrance they had crawled through. "If we can make it to that beam, maybe," she thought aloud, but the words stuck in her throat. It felt risky, desperate. "What if they see us?" Marco asked, eyes now wide with fear, urgency mounting in his voice. "If they see us, we fight," she whispered fiercely. "You trust me, don't you?" He nodded. Then grab my hand when I say go. We'll move fast." With her heart in her throat, she counted down in her mind. 3, 2, 1. Now! They scrambled out into the light, sprinting towards the beam. Marco kept pace beside her, their bodies pressed together as they ran. Lisa barely breathed, her focus on the beam ahead. Suddenly, a sharp shout rang out. "There they are!" The world morphed into chaos. It felt like time slowed, the air thickened with impending danger. Lisa's heart raced as gunshots burst through the din, echoing in her ears. Marco squealed and their eyes met, a shared understanding of fear. "Run!" she shouted, pulling him toward the beam, her instincts overriding logic. The ground beneath them felt as if it was crumbling away, the danger so potent. They dove behind the beam, the world behind them erupting into chaos as Corrado's men charged toward them, voices raised. She heard the unmistakable sound of a gun being cocked. "Stay down," she hissed, pulling Marco close. Their breaths mingled, fear weaving through them like a tether between life and death. As the world outside continued to crumble, Lisa's heart raced not just for her survival, but for her son's future. She had to find a way out, to keep him safe. But as they huddled against the beam, she couldn't shake the feeling that their fate was more precarious than she could ever imagine. The sound of footsteps grew louder, came closer, and she knew they were still being hunted. What had she unleashed in her fight to protect him? Would fighting back lead to liberation or destruction? The weight of her choices pressed heavily. Just then, a shadow fell across their hiding spot. Would they finally be discovered? A moment of stillness filled the air before all hell broke loose. The footsteps drew closer, the voices growing louder as Lisa and Marco pressed their backs against the beam. Panic swirled like a tempest in her chest, but she couldn't let it overtake her. "Stay down, Marco," she whispered fiercely, gripping his small hand tight. He nodded, determination shining through terror, and she felt a surge of hope. This boy, this brave boy, deserved more than this nightmare. The shadow loomed larger, accompanied by the unmistakable silhouette of Corrado stretching across the entrance. "I know you're in here," he called, his voice a chill cascading through the air. "There's nowhere to run." Lisa's heart thundered, but she steeled herself. If they found them, the game was over. They'd put everything on the line, but she couldn't allow fear to dictate their fates. She peeked around the beam and saw one of the men stepping deeper into the construction site. "Now," she urged, whispering with urgency, and she took Marco's hand, leading him to the side to make their move. They sprinted to the nearest wall, ducking behind a stack of materials just as Corrado's men began combing through the area. Corrado's growl echoed again. "Find them, now!" Adrenaline pulsed through her veins as they crouched low, eyes darting for any hidden exits. As she looked around, Lisa saw a flickering exit sign hanging above a door at the far side of the site. It was small and barely lit, but it glimmered like a beacon of hope. "That way," she pointed, locking eyes with Marco, whose lips formed a tight line. He nodded almost imperceptibly. They carefully sidestepped their way around the edge of the scattered debris. The danger felt palpable, fear clawing at their heels, as every noise echoed like thunder. With a gut-wrenching crash, another crate toppled nearby, sending a cloud of dust into the air. "What was that?" one of the men shouted, sending both their hearts racing. Lisa took Marco's hand again. "Keep moving, we're almost there." They ducked around the scattered wood planks, and Marco kept pace with her, his small body filled with determination. As they approached the exit, hope surged within her. Would they really make it out? But just as they neared the door, a figure appeared from the shadows, one of Corrado's men. Lisa's throat tightened. She felt pinned. "Stop right there," the man barked, pointing directly at them. They froze, breath caught in their throats, the reality of capture closing in like a vice grip. But Lisa's instincts surged like fire. "Move," she shouted, pushing Marco toward the door and simultaneously lunging the other way. "Go, now!" Just as Marco dove through the exit, she realized the man had turned his focus to her. She twisted sharply and grabbed a nearby metal pipe, swinging it to the right and catching him off guard. It slammed against his shoulder, forcing him back with a grunt, just enough time for her to dart toward the door. "Go, Marco, keep running." Heart pounding, she barreled through the doorway, adrenaline coursing through every vein in her body as she rejoined the outside world, suddenly free, yet acutely aware that danger still lurked. They didn't stop. They bolted across the parking lot into the shadows, Lisa glancing behind them. The chaos inside was fading, but the feeling of danger hadn't lightened. "Mommy," Marco gasped, panting hard as they ran. "Are we safe?" "Not yet," she replied, forcing every ounce of resolve she had. "But we will be. Just keep running. There's a police station nearby." They sprinted down the street, weaving between parked cars and desperate shadows. Every step was filled with hope, but also worry. Would they make it in time? Would Corrado's grip over them stretch further than they could outrun? As they rounded a corner, a flood of lights burst into view, the unmistakable glow of blue and red flashing in the night. Relieved tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. "There! That's it!" she shouted, her heart swelling with joy. "We're almost there!" Marco pushed himself, his youthful energy propelling forward. They rushed toward the station, pounding through the doors. "Help! Please help us!" Lisa cried out, her voice cracking under the weight of emotion. A police officer emerged, eyes wide with concern. "What's going on?" "Corrado, he's after us!" she gasped, desperate urgency spilling from her lips. "We need protection." The officer nodded, ushering them inside as another quickly emerged with a phone in hand. "Stay behind me." The officer positioned himself in front of them, calling for backup. Marco stepped close, clinging to her side, their hearts beating in sync. This moment felt monumental, a transformative shift from terror to safety. Help arrived, and voices buzzed around them, professionals stepping into action. For the first time that night, Lisa felt a deep-rooted flicker of hope light within her. Maybe they would be okay. Maybe, despite the shadows of their past, they could forge a different future. As they settled, uncertainty glanced back over its shoulder, but with a full heart, Lisa felt the tide begin to turn. "Mommy," Marco said, the innocence shining through again. "Yes, sweetie," she replied, resting a hand on his head. "I'm not scared anymore," he assured her. In that instant, she understood. It wasn't just a dream they were chasing. It was the light within them both, fighting against all odds, stronger than fear. And for the first time, surrounded by support and safety, Lisa realized they could rewrite their story together, a story freed from the darkness of despair and reimagined through the strength of love. As the sirens wailed, a warm embrace wrapped around them, and in her heart, she finally believed everything would be okay. But to ensure their journey continues, to share stories of hope and resilience, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support and drop a like to feed the algorithm that helps us grow. Comment down below your reactions and feelings about this incredible ending. And don't wait, not even one more second, to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation.